Halo, kamu lagi dengerin Clinomic Radio bareng gue Dinia, founder dan CEO-nya Clinomic. Clinomic adalah sebuah singkatan dari Clean Economy, startup yang mengkurasikan produk ramah lingkungan serta content destinations untuk mendukung gaya hidup minim karbon kamu dan pengembangan clean economy di Indonesia. Sesuai dengan resolusi kami di tahun 2020 ini, kami kembali menghadirkan Clean Economy Champion atau para pelaku usaha yang membangun bisnis serta membantu pelestarian lingkungan. Di episode kali ini kami ngobrol-ngobrol dengan Josie, salah satu founder dari Capture, sebuah startup yang berasal dari Singapura yang bikin aplikasi untuk bisa nge-track langsung berapa carbon footprint kamu yang diproduksi secara real time. Nih, aplikasi ini juga udah bisa kamu download loh di Google Store dan Apple Store. Cara kerja aplikasi ini sih sebenarnya mirip seperti aplikasi kesehatan yang nge-track kamu dari berapa kilometer atau nge-track berapa kalori yang sudah kamu bakar dalam satu sesi olahraga. Cuman bedanya yang dihitung oleh aplikasi ini adalah berapa kilogram emisi karbon yang sudah kita produksi ke atmosfer. Di aplikasi ini juga banyak loh ngebantu soal berita-berita tentang tips-tips mengurangi jejak karbon, termasuk program untuk meng-offset si emisi karbon yang sudah kamu keluarkan. Nah, simak ya obrolan kami dan coba apps ini untuk membantu kamu agar jatah emisi karbon kamu nggak melebihi jatah batasan emisi karbon per orang. Ringkasan wawancara ini bisa kamu baca juga di blog kami. Oke? Enjoy!
Hi Josie, thank you so much for joining us in this podcast interview and then our YouTube series. Just a little introduction to our audience that so I saw Capture on my Google Newsfeed and then I immediately loved this and then I jumped to their Instagram and then DM them immediately and asked them for this interview, and Josie was so kind to agree to this. And so Josie, please explain, what do you guys do? What is Captures, and explain everything.
Alright, okay. So Capture is an app that will help you to track, reduce, and then remove CO2 emissions from your everyday life. So it's an app that you can use on your phone, and what we do is we start with different categories of your carbon footprint. So if you think about your carbon emissions as an individual, they fit into different categories. So you have carbon emissions from things like travel, there are carbon emissions from, related to your purchases, related to your food choices, how you eat your home. There's lots of different categories of your carbon footprint. And we provide tracking for each of those categories one by one. Now we're starting with travel, and we can do that by using the GPS signals within your phone to be able to predict what mode of travel you used. If you think about it, when you're on a bus, your movements are slightly different than when you're in a car. And when you're in a flight, of course, you disappear in one country and you appear in the next country. Mm-hmm. So what we'll do is we'll be using that data to show you what your CO2 emissions are from your transport. So that's what we do. So it's track, reduce, remove. So you track your emissions, we help you to reduce them. So we'll show you, what's used up the most this month. And then when it comes to removing emissions, we will help you to purchase something called a carbon offset. Mm-hmm. So let's say, for example, you emit 100 kilograms of CO2 this month. What we'll do is you'll be able to purchase a credit that will make sure that trees will be planted, forests will be protected, or renewable energy will be invested in, so that CO2 will sort of balance out.
Okay, so very exciting. And so how do you guys come up with this idea? Like, what makes you created this app?
Yes, so it's very much a personal problem of mine. So in my last job, I traveled a lot for work, and I was actually working with different indigenous communities around the world, including some Jack communities in Kalimantan. So I got to visit there, which was just beautiful. But I started seeing how indigenous communities were being really harshly affected by climate change. So it could be through increased forest fires, which are linked to climate change. It could be through drought. It could be through extreme winters. And I started looking at the impact that I was having myself and how I was personally responsible for that. I started to do a bit of research around carbon emissions and realized that actually the top 10% of the sort of wealthiest individuals in the world produce around 50% of the emissions. Wow. So it's really unfair, right? It's really unfair. It's actually people who are flying do this. And then there's that question of like, can one person make a difference? What impact can I have? And I looked at all the other tools that we have available for ourselves. Like we have trackers for our reproductive cycles, we have trackers for eating, trackers for spending. Like there's a tracker for everything, right? But there wasn't a tracker for your carbon footprint. Like someone should make this, so that's what we did.
Cool. So, would this app be available for everyone? I mean, would it work in Indonesia, for example?
Yes. So that's why we wanted to create the GPS technology within the app. So there are a couple of different ways that you can track your carbon emissions. So we could look at your spending and then try and predict from your spending, like where you're shopping, what your footprint would be. But we've gone for looking at GPS because it doesn't matter where you are in the world, as long as you share access to your GPS with us, we'll be able to predict your mode of travel. So as long as you're able to download us from the Play Store and from the App Store, you should be able to use Capture.
Cool, can't wait for that. And so how does us to calculate the carbon footprint? Because I've seen some of, I mean, if you Google like carbon footprint calculator, you can find some of them online, and then I always find it like it's very difficult to use, because it can be very complicated, it can be very mathematical, like how do we actually calculate a carbon footprint?
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so at the moment right now, there are loads of really good online calculators available. So one example of that is the one by WWF. So WWF has a carbon footprint calculator, and it's online. They ask you lots of different questions about your lifestyle. So they'll ask you about the things that you buy, they'll ask you about your diet, they'll ask you about your home, they'll ask you about your travel. And it seems to come down to a question of accuracy. So it really depends. The more accurate you want your carbon footprint to be measured, the more questions you have to answer about yourself. Now, what we wanted to do was not just take like a static one-time assessment. We wanted to give you something that you could sort of see on a day-to-day basis, like actually what is your footprint. And we've gone for travel initially because it's something we can measure using your GPS signals. So what we say is sort of based on your GPS patterns, we'll be able to predict your mode of travel. From that mode of travel, we then do calculations on our side that says, right, an average person in a car per minute, you're looking at sort of these sorts of amounts of CO2 released per minute. Now, at the beginning, it's not going to be 100% accurate, at all, because there are loads of questions that we would need to ask to get better accuracy, such as what type of car. You'd also be looking at even little things like, are you driving uphill or downhill?
Yes.
Also, what type of fuel are you using? Are you using, a high quality of fuel? There are loads of questions.
What cc your car is?
Yeah. Right? Like we do need to know that. So what we're doing is we're starting with assumptions, and we explain all of the assumptions, via our site. I can show you how we arrived at this figure. So sometimes we take sort of US averages for cars, but obviously cars do vary on a country by country basis. In the future, what we want to add is if you really want to enter in your car model, you'll be able to do that. We'll be able to adjust the emission calculations for that. So in time, it will become more accurate. The longer you use it, more questions will ask you here and there, and the more accurate the calculations will be able to be on our side.
Cool. So, Captures, your app will make things easier for us once you have those assumptions in, and then because it tracks down our mobility through GPS, then it will be just automatically calculated through the apps. Okay,
yes,
that's interesting.
It should be as easy. So I don't know if you're sort of familiar with like Fitbit or fitness tracker apps. Anything that measures your footsteps automatically in the background, like it should be as easy to measure your carbon footprint as it is to measure your actual footprints.
Okay. So do you have any tips for someone who just starting to learn about this whole process, because it can be very complicated, like you just explained before?
Yes. So I would say firstly a philosophical tip. You don't have to be perfect.
Yes.
Don't worry. Like it's always better to do something than to do nothing.
Yeah.
And I think this is like I've been vegetarian for a while, and I think there's often this pressure that you either have to be like 100% vegan and perfect, or like don't even bother. But like that's not the case, So first of all, just do what you can, and it's going to take some time, and that's fine. The important thing is that you're trying. So that's definitely the first thing. What I would look for is do sort of a general footprint calculator, so you'll be able to do that within the Capture app, but you could also look at others. As I said, the WWF one's really good. Get a general picture of what your carbon footprint is in total, and you might be quite surprised at the sort of percentages that are coming from different parts of your life. So, for example, flying, flying for me was around half of my carbon footprint. So it's like it has a really big impact. And flying can be quite surprising. So I took a look. Then there's another great website. It's called shameplane.com. It's really simple, but a flight from Jakarta to Sydney can release about 2.2 tons of CO2. But if you give up a car for a year, you only save about 1.3 tons.
Okay.
So it's like,
Yeah.
I think somebody's like, it's quite good, but I try and share a car,
Yeah.
and I'm really, I'm taking public transport, but then you take one flight, and it's not that it undoes all of that,
Yeah.
but it's just, I'm sorry to look for the big ticket items first and go for those.
Yeah.
And just do what you can.
Yeah.
Just make a start and just see what you can do. There are some changes that'll be pretty easy, and then there are some changes that'll be harder. So for me, flying is still the most difficult one. I have a meeting in Berlin next week. I'm currently in the UK, and I was like, I want to take a train. I have to take like 5 trains, and I think the journey takes about 17 hours. So yeah, it's a little painful. Yeah, a direct flight takes like an hour and 20 minutes, and it's a lot cheaper. So
Yeah.
some change, but I'm gonna take the train one way. I'm upset with the flights.
Yeah.
But yeah, some are harder than others. So do what you can.
Yeah, because that could be like a very challenging things for Indonesian as well, because we live in a huge countries, and our countries consist of like islands, and then it doesn't make sense for people to take boats, for example, to one place and another, for example. I think flight for Indonesian, if you want to go from one city to another city, would be the most feasible options, I guess. So I understand you also provide like an offset programs through your application. So tell us about that. Do you have like projects in Indonesia, for example?
Yes. Okay. So we've had a couple of people ask about where our projects are located, and it's a really difficult one. So what we wanted to do was to choose a selection of projects and make it available to our users so that they can then select which particular one that they want to sort of invest in. We have some different projects. So one project, for example, is tree planting, and that project's located in Panama. We have another project that's around conserving forests, and they use satellite images to really watch the forest carefully. That project's in North America. We have another project that's funding renewable energy. That one's in Taiwan. Then we also have the fourth type of project, which is very exciting, but unfortunately it's the most expensive, and that's something called direct air capture. And we use, it sounds like science fiction, it's amazing.
Yeah.
There are huge machines that kind of absorb CO2 directly from the air, and then using geothermal energy, they can turn that CO2 into liquid. It's pumped underground, and eventually it transforms into stone. It's almost like putting it back in as a fossil
Yes.
safely there.
Yeah.
So we're looking for different projects, and there may be some projects in Indonesia that we start working with. The most important thing for us is to make sure that the project is certified to sort of the highest standards possible. So if you go online to buy a carbon credit, you can buy it from different certifying bodies. You can buy it from sort of Red Plus, you can buy it from VCS, you can buy it from Gold Standard. We are trying to find the projects that are certified to sort of the highest level. So let's say, for example, if you pay somebody $10 to look after a piece of forest, you need to make sure that that forest is really carefully looked after. So we're just sort of trying to sort of work with the best projects that we can find, and we may find some projects in Indonesia in time. But the other thing to mention, and it's sort of hard to get our heads around, but if you produce CO2, we're talking about this problem from like a global perspective.
Yes.
CO2 goes up into the Earth's atmosphere, it's going to get us all, and that's why it's so unfair, right? Because a lot of countries are responsible for, and that's what I was saying about 10% producing 50%, but there's a lot of unfairness around this, but we all end up breathing sort of the same air eventually. And if you absorb CO2 in Panama, or you absorb CO2 in Java, it's still going to help, with the climate crisis. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Josie. I've learned a lot from our 13 minutes of conversation. It's really exciting. So when is it captures will be available to be downloaded?
Yes. So we have thecapture.club. You can sign up and be one of the first ones to test the app. We should have it more publicly available very early January, but if you sign up now, you can be one of the first ones to sort of download and test it. It'll be ready to download sort of in the next week or so. So yeah, we would love your feedback. Like, obviously, when all new apps come out, there are going to be a couple little bugs here and there, and we also want to hear from you. What else do you want to track? You know, do you want to track diet? Is that really important to you? Or about the projects, we might find that people, really want to have a project that is local to them. So at the end of the day, we want to be a tool for you. So it's important for us to find out, like, what's useful to you, what do you want, and we would love to hear your feedback. So yeah, please sign up, and we'll send you our download code soon.
Yay! Thank you so much, Josie. Really looking forward for the launch, for the official launch of your apps capture. So thank you so much. Talk to you soon.
Thanks.